This isn't a shelter, sweetheart. Free treatments down the street. Dr. Charles Reed's voice dripped with condescension as the fluorescent lights of Ridgeview Medical Center flickered overhead. To him, the woman in the gray hoodie was just another broke traveler looking for pity, not a patient worth saving. He didn't see the calm intelligence behind her pain-glazed eyes or the quiet authority in her trembling hands. As security dragged Amani Rivers into the freezing night, he smirked, unaware that the woman he'd just humiliated owned half the city. By morning, she'd own him too. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights of Ridgeview Medical Center's emergency room cast harsh shadows across Amani Rivers' face as she approached the intake desk. Her normally confident stride was reduced to a pained shuffle, one hand pressed firmly against her side. The sharp stabbing sensation that had started on her flight home had only gotten worse. The waiting room buzzed with quiet misery. Crying children, elderly patients slumped in uncomfortable chairs, the occasional wet cough echoing off institutional green walls. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Nurse Gina Parker sat behind a plexiglass barrier, her eyes fixed on a computer screen. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her expression blank with the numbness that comes from too many 12-hour shifts. She didn't look up as Amani approached. "I need to see a doctor," Amani said, her voice tight with pain. "Something's wrong. The pain in my side is getting worse." Gina's fingers continued clicking away at her keyboard. "Fill these out." She slid a clipboard through the opening, still not making eye contact. "Insurance card and ID?" "I have insurance, but my wallet's in my checked bag. I came straight from the airport." Sweat beaded on Amani's forehead. "Please, I really need help." This finally made Gina look up, her eyes doing a quick sweep of Amani's disheveled appearance. The gray hoodie, the messy hair, the lack of makeup. Her lip curled slightly. "Without proof of insurance, you'll have to wait. Take a seat." Amani's legs felt shaky as she lowered herself into one of the hard plastic chairs. The clipboard trembled in her hands as she tried to focus on the small print. The pain made it hard to concentrate, the letters swimming before her eyes. Hours crawled by. The waiting room slowly emptied and filled again. Amani watched as patients who arrived after her were called back. Her skin felt clammy, her vision starting to blur at the edges. She approached the desk twice more, only to be waved away by Nurse Parker. "Still processing your paperwork," was all she would say. Around midnight, Dr. Charles Reed emerged from behind the double doors. His white coat was pristine, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. He carried himself with the entitled confidence of someone used to being the smartest person in the room. "Dr. Reed!" Amani called out, struggling to her feet. "Please, I've been waiting for hours. Something's seriously wrong." He turned, giving her the same dismissive once-over Nurse Parker had earlier. His expression hardened. "Ma'am, we're dealing with actual emergencies tonight. If you're just looking for a warm place to sleep—" "I'm not homeless," Amani said, her voice breaking with frustration and pain. "I'm sick. I need help." "This isn't a shelter," he said loudly, his tone dripping with condescension. "If you're looking for free treatment, County General's down the street." He emphasized the words "free treatment" with obvious distaste. Two security guards standing near the entrance chuckled. One nudged the other with his elbow. "I can pay," Amani insisted, reaching for her phone to show him her insurance app. "Just let me—" "That's enough, Doctor." Reed cut her off. He turned to the guards. "Please escort this woman out. She's disturbing the other patients." "Don't touch me," Amani said as the guards approached. But they grabbed her arms anyway, their grips tight enough to bruise. She tried to twist away, to maintain some dignity, but her legs were weak from hours of pain. Her feet scraped across the tile floor as they dragged her toward the exit. Her phone slipped from her pocket, hitting the ground with a sharp crack. The other patients in the waiting room watched in uncomfortable silence. Some looked away. Others stared with hollow eyes. No one moved to help. Through the fog of pain and humiliation, Amani caught one last glimpse of Dr. Reed's face, his satisfied smirk as he watched her removal, like he was dealing with a minor annoyance rather than a human being in distress. Then the automatic doors slid shut behind her with a soft whoosh, leaving her alone in the cold night air. The security guards released her arms and went back inside without a word, leaving her to stumble against the rough brick wall. The emergency room's bright lights spilled out onto the sidewalk through the glass doors, illuminating the emergency entrance sign above. The same doors she'd walked through hours ago seeking help, now firmly closed against her. Her side throbbed with each heartbeat, a steady reminder of the treatment she'd been denied. Traffic rushed by on the street, headlights cutting through the darkness. A siren wailed in the distance, another ambulance bringing another patient to these same doors. The night air was sharp with approaching winter, cutting through her thin hoodie and making her shiver. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Amani's penthouse apartment, casting warm patterns across her king-sized bed. She blinked awake slowly, her mouth dry from the strong painkillers she'd taken after getting home. The digital clock on her nightstand showed 7:15 a.m. The stabbing pain in her side had dulled to a manageable ache. She'd been lucky to have emergency medication at home, a precaution from previous hospital visits where she'd faced similar treatment, though never quite this extreme. The sound of heels clicking rapidly across hardwood made her turn her head. Julianne Cole burst through the bedroom door, still wearing her coat, her face tight with worry. "Amani, why didn't you call me last night? I just got your message about the ER." Julianne dropped her designer bag and rushed to the bedside. "What happened? Are you okay?" Amani pushed herself up against the pillows, wincing slightly. "I'm fine now. Just a bad reaction to something, I think. The pain's mostly gone." "But the ER? They treated you, right?" Julianne perched on the edge of the bed, her sharp business attire contrasting with the rumpled sheets. "Treated me?" Amani let out a bitter laugh. "They treated me like something they scraped off their shoe." Her voice was quiet, controlled, but Julianne recognized the dangerous edge to it. "Their precious Dr. Reed took one look at me in my hoodie and sweats and decided I wasn't worth his time." "He what?" Julianne's eyes widened. "Tell me everything." As Amani recounted the previous night's events, her composed facade began to crack. Her hands clenched the silk sheets as she described the nurse's dismissal, the endless waiting, the security guard's rough handling. "We need to go public with this," Julianne said when she finished, already pulling out her phone. "I still have contacts at the Times. This kind of discrimination—" "No." Amani's tone was firm. "The press would turn it into another sad story about racism in healthcare. Maybe a few angry tweets, some hollow apologies, and then business as usual." She swung her legs out of bed, standing carefully. "Revenge works best behind closed doors." Julianne watched as Amani walked to her desk and picked up her backup phone, the one that hadn't been smashed on the ER floor. "What are you planning? Remember that acquisition we've been working on? The one we've kept quiet?" Amani's fingers flew across the phone's screen. Time to pull the trigger. Understanding dawned on Julianne's face. "Ridgeview Medical Center? But we weren't planning to finalize for another—" "Things change." Amani put the phone to her ear. "Marcus? Yes, I know it's early. I need you to execute those papers we prepared. Immediately." She paused, listening. "Yes, the full acquisition. Wire the funds as discussed." Another pause. "Thank you." She ended the call and turned to Julianne, who was already typing on her tablet. "What do you need from me?" "Call an emergency board meeting, 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure every department head is there, including all medical staff." A small, cold smile played at the corners of Amani's mouth. "Especially Dr. Charles Reed." "They'll want an explanation for the rush," Julianne said, though her fingers never stopped moving across the screen. "Tell them it's a surprise inspection from the new ownership. Don't mention Metasphere or my name." Amani walked to her massive closet, sliding open the doors. "Let them sweat a little. You're going to destroy him, aren't you?" Julianne's voice held equal parts admiration and concern. "Him? He's just a symptom." Amani pulled out a crisp black suit. Armani, tailored perfectly to her frame. "I'm going to expose the whole disease." As Julianne coordinated the meeting, Amani moved through her morning routine with practiced precision. The hot shower eased the last of her muscle aches. She applied her makeup carefully, subtle but flawless, a mask of professional perfection. Her fingers worked swiftly, gathering her thick black hair into a sleek, tight bun. Each movement was deliberate, like a warrior donning armor. The suit jacket settled onto her shoulders with comfortable weight, its sharp lines a far cry from last night's hoodie. "Cars waiting downstairs," Julianne called from the living room. "Meetings confirmed. Everyone will be there." Amani stood before her full-length mirror, adjusting her pearl earrings, her mother's pearls, worn on days when she needed extra strength. The woman who looked back at her bore no resemblance to the one who'd been dragged from the ER hours ago. This woman radiated power, control, and quiet danger. She straightened her jacket one final time, eyes hard with determination. "Let's see how they treat me now." The boardroom at Ridgeview Medical Center hummed with morning tension. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting shadows across the long mahogany table where Thomas Grayson held court. His silver hair caught the light as he leaned forward, gesturing at a spreadsheet projected on the wall. "These numbers aren't sustainable," he said, his polished voice carrying authority earned from decades of running hospitals like personal fiefdoms. "We need to cut at least 15% from the ER budget this quarter." Dr. Charles Reed nodded eagerly from his seat near the head of the table, his white coat pristine, his posture radiating the same arrogance he'd shown in the ER hours before. "I've been saying this for months. Too many non-paying patients clogging up the system. If we tighten admission criteria..." The heavy double doors swung open. Every head turned as Amani Rivers strode into the room, her heels clicking purposefully against the marble floor. The black Armani suit she wore seemed to absorb light, making her presence even more commanding. Behind her, Julianne Cole slipped in quietly, tablet in hand. Confused glances bounced between the executives. Grayson's carefully maintained smile flickered. "I'm sorry, but this is a private meeting. Security works for me now," Amani said simply, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. She moved to the head of the table, letting the weight of silence build. "As of 6 a.m. this morning, Metasphere Technologies has completed its acquisition of Ridgeview Medical Center." The reaction rippled through the room like a shock wave. Grayson's face went slack. Dr. Reed's smug expression crumpled into confusion, then dawning horror as recognition crept in. "That's impossible," Grayson stammered, shuffling papers as if searching for proof. "The board would have to—" "The board approved the sale last month," Amani cut in smoothly. "We've been in negotiations for quite some time. I simply chose to expedite the final transfer." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes it takes a personal experience to show you exactly what needs changing in an institution. She turned to Julianne, who handed her a manila envelope. The room remained frozen as Amani walked deliberately around the table, her heels echoing in the silence. She stopped directly behind Dr. Reed's chair, He twisted to look up at her, his face now the color of old paper. Ms. Rivers, Dr. Rivers, she corrected softly, drawing out a glossy photograph from the envelope. She let it fall onto the table in front of him with a sharp snap. It showed her from the previous night, disheveled, in pain, being dragged out by security, while Reed watched with that smirk. You refused treatment to your new boss. Her words fell like stones in still water. Would you like to explain your exact words to the board? About how this isn't a shelter? About sending me to County General for free treatment? Reed's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Sweat beaded on his forehead. No explanation. Amani straightened, addressing the room at large. Then let me be clear about my first executive decision. Dr. Charles Reed, you're fired. Effective immediately. The words hung in the air for a moment before chaos erupted. Grayson half rose from his chair, spluttering about contracts and procedures. Other board members whispered urgently to each other. But Amani simply raised her hand, and the noise died. Security, she called out. 2 guards, different ones from the previous night, stepped into the room. Please escort Dr. Reed out, and take his ID badge. Reed stumbled to his feet, face flushed with humiliation. You can't. I'll sue. For what? Amani's voice was ice. Discriminating against patients, violating your oath. Please, do sue. Discovery would be fascinating. She nodded to the guards. His office needs to be cleared by noon. The security guards moved forward, one holding out his hand for Reed's badge. After a moment of rigid resistance, Reed yanked it off and threw it on the table. As he was led out, whispers followed him. The same kind of whispers that had followed Amani the night before, but now charged with a very different energy. The meeting continued, with Amani laying out immediate changes to admission policies and patient care standards. But Thomas Grayson watched her with calculating eyes, his fingers drumming quietly on the table. When it was over, Amani took a walk through the hospital corridors, retracing her steps from the previous night. The ER waiting room looked different in daylight, less desperate somehow, though just as busy. She spotted Nurse Gina Parker at the intake desk, watching her approach with undisguised fear. The young nurse's hands shook as she tried to organize papers, clearly remembering her dismissive treatment of Amani hours before. When Amani stopped at her desk, Gina seemed to shrink into herself. Dr. Rivers, I'm so sorry about last night. I didn't know. I should have. Don't worry, Amani said softly, though her tone carried steel underneath. I'm not here for revenge. She leaned closer, making sure Gina met her eyes. I'm here for reform. But something in Amani's gaze, a flash of remembered pain, a promise of accountability, made Gina swallow hard and look away first. The message was clear. Reform wouldn't be gentle, and every person who had enabled the system's cruelty would face their part in it. Amani's new office still held traces of Thomas Grayson's presence. Leather-bound medical texts arranged for show, expensive art that said nothing. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the afternoon sun glint off parked cars below, while Julianne spread files across the mahogany desk. These numbers don't add up, Julianne said, frowning at her tablet. Look at the patient routing data from the past year. She turned the screen toward Amani. The redirect rates for minority patients are nearly triple those of white patients with similar symptoms. Amani moved away from the window, her heels silent on the thick carpet. Show me the diagnostic codes. That's the strange part. Julianne pulled up another chart. Majority of redirects are labeled non-emergency, despite presenting with serious symptoms. Chest pains, severe bleeding, even... A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened slightly, and an older black woman in nursing scrubs peered in. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back neatly, and her ID badge read Ella Davenport, RN. "Sorry to interrupt," she said quietly, her voice carrying decades of carefully measured words. "I heard you were reviewing patient records." She glanced down the hallway before stepping inside and closing the door. "Been waiting 30 years for someone like you." Amani studied the nurse's face. The lines around her eyes spoke of wisdom earned through years of witnessed injustice. "Please, come in, Nurse Davenport." "Ella," the older woman corrected, moving to stand near the desk. Her eyes fell on the spread of files. "I see you've found the redirect patterns. You know about these?" Julianne asked, straightening in her chair. Ella's laugh was bitter and brief. "Honey, I've watched it happen every day since I started here. Young black mother with pre-eclampsia, redirected. Latino grandfather with stroke symptoms, redirected. They call it resource management, but we all know what it really is." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook, worn at the edges. "I've been keeping my own records, names, dates, outcomes. The ones that haunt me most are the patients who never made it to another hospital." Amani's jaw tightened. "Show me." For the next hour, they cross-referenced Ella's detailed notes with official hospital records. A disturbing pattern emerged. Patients turned away from Ridgeview who later died en route to other facilities or at home. Their deaths were documented in county records, but never connected back to their initial rejection from the ER. "Here," Julianne said suddenly, pointing to her screen. "The billing system has a separate classification for these cases. They're coded as NE redirect, non-emergency redirect. But look at the insurance data." Amani leaned in. "They're still billing for initial assessment? Minimal fees, but yes. Multiple charges per patient, adding up to significant amounts over time. The insurance companies pay out. No questions asked." Julianne's fingers flew over the keyboard. "And the money flows through 3 different subsidiary accounts before landing in an offshore holding company?" "Grayson," Ella said quietly. "He's been running this system for years, takes a cut of every redirect, builds his empire on denied care." She touched the notebook in her pocket. "I've got names of nurses who tried to fight it. They didn't last long." Amani straightened, her decision already made. "I want a full audit. Every redirect for the past 5 years, every death, every dollar." She turned to Julianne. "Get our best data team on this. I want to know exactly how deep this goes." "Amani," Julianne said carefully, "Grayson has friends in high places. State Medical Board, Insurance Commission, even the governor's office. If we start digging—" "Let them come," Amani replied, her voice steel-edged. "I didn't build Medisphere by backing down from bullies with political connections." Ella nodded slowly. "I'll help. I know where the bodies are buried, figuratively and literally. But Julianne's right about one thing. Grayson's dangerous when cornered, and you've already taken his hospital." "Then we'll need to move carefully," Amani said. "Ella, can you get me access to the security footage archives? I want to see these redirects firsthand." "I'll do better than that," Ella replied. "I'll get you the unlock codes for the backup servers. Grayson doesn't know about them. Installed after a lawsuit 6 years ago." Night fell as they worked, the office growing darker until only desk lamps illuminated their grim task. Around midnight, Amani sent Julianne and Ella home, promising to leave soon herself. Instead, she took the elevator down to the empty ER. The fluorescent lights hummed in the silence, casting harsh shadows across vacant chairs. Her footsteps echoed as she walked the same path she'd taken the night before, past the intake desk where Nurse Parker had dismissed her, past the security station where the guards had smirked. She stopped at a specific chair, worn blue fabric, slightly crooked. the exact spot where she'd sat hunched in pain, watching others get called while she was ignored, where she'd felt the full weight of systemic contempt crash down on her shoulders. Amani touched the chair's back, feeling the texture of its fabric. "Never again," she whispered into the empty room. The words carried all her fury, all her determination, all her promise to every patient who'd ever sat in this chair and been deemed unworthy of care. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Amani's mood as she walked through Ridgeview's lobby. Staff members nodded respectfully or quickly looked away. News of yesterday's confrontation had spread fast. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she headed to the executive wing, going over audit strategies in her mind. She slowed as she approached her office. The door stood slightly ajar, though she distinctly remembered locking it last night. Her hand hesitated on the handle for just a moment before she pushed it open. Everything looked untouched at first glance. The files still neatly stacked, chairs properly arranged, but her computer monitor glowed in the dim morning light, though she'd shut it down before leaving. As she moved closer, bold text flashed across the black screen. "Drop the audit or you'll regret it." Amani's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral as she took out her phone and snapped several photos of the screen. She was still documenting the scene when Julianne burst in, already talking rapidly. The data team found something big in those redirect patterns. "Oh." She stopped short, seeing the message. "Well, that's subtle. Have it scan my computer for breaches," Amani said calmly, settling into her chair. "And get me everything you can on Grayson's technical team." "Has to be them," Julianne said, pulling out her tablet. "They're the only ones with that level of system access. Want me to call security?" "Not yet." Amani's fingers drummed once on her desk. "Let's see what else they try first." A soft knock made them both turn. Ella stood in the doorway, looking tired but determined. "Thought I might find you both here early." She glanced at the computer screen and sighed. "Ah, they're starting with the warning phase." "Warning phase?" Julianne asked. "Mm-hmm." Ella settled into one of the visitor chairs, smoothing her scrubs. "First comes the messages. Then the accidental bumps in the parking lot. Cars following you home after late shifts." She smiled grimly. "Been through it all before, trying to report patient deaths. Last time, someone broke into my house. Didn't take anything, just wanted me to know they could." Amani's expression darkened. "Why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" "Because I knew you'd face worse, being in charge now. Wanted you to have one night's peace before it started." Ella leaned forward. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Amani stood, walking to the window. The morning rain had picked up, streaming down the glass in rivulets. "Julianne, call legal. I want whistleblower protection policies drafted and distributed to all staff by end of day. Anonymous reporting channels, guaranteed job security, the works." "They'll fight it," Julianne warned, already typing notes. "Let them. And get me everything on hospital security protocols. I want to know who has access to what, when, and how." She turned back to face them. "Ella, I need you to—" A commotion in the hallway cut her off. Raised voices echoed through the corridor, getting closer. They could make out Dr. Reed's distinctive tone, sharp with anger. "This is discrimination. 30 years of service thrown away because some tech CEO wanted revenge." Amani moved to her door, Julianne and Ella following. Reed stood near the nurse's station, face red, jabbing his finger at a young reporter who scribbled frantically in a notepad. Security guards hovered nearby, unsure whether to intervene. "She's using race to cover her corporate takeover," Reed shouted, clearly playing to his audience. "I'm being fired by a race-baiting opportunist who wouldn't know real medicine if it saved her life." The reporter ate it up, nodding eagerly. And you say you were given no warning, no chance to defend yourself? None. This is what happens when hospitals are run by Silicon Valley social justice warriors instead of real doctors. Amani watched silently from her doorway as Reed stormed toward the exit, the reporter hurrying after him. Other staff members quickly dispersed, avoiding eye contact. "Want me to release the security footage?" Julianne asked quietly. "Show everyone how he really treated you?" "Not yet," Amani replied. "Let him dig his grave deeper first." That evening, Amani sat in her apartment, a glass of wine untouched beside her as she watched the local news. The story had made the evening broadcast just as she'd expected. Reed appeared on screen, now wearing a suit, his anger polished into righteous indignation. "This is about competent medical professionals being replaced by corporate algorithms," he said smoothly. "Ms. Rivers doesn't understand that medicine requires human judgment, not computer programs." The reporter's voiceover added, "Sources say the controversial firing may be part of a larger pattern of aggressive corporate restructuring at Ridgeview Medical Center." Amani muted the TV, a small smile playing at her lips. "They still don't see me," she muttered, taking her first sip of wine. "Good. That makes me invisible." Her phone buzzed. Another email from IT about the security breach. They'd traced the threatening message to a terminal in the basement servers, but the access logs had been wiped. Amateur work, really. As if she hadn't dealt with far worse in her climb to the top. The rain continued outside her windows, the city lights blurred into watery halos. Somewhere out there, Grayson and his allies were plotting their next move, confident they could scare her away from their profitable little scheme. They saw her as an outsider, a disruptor to be eliminated. They had no idea what she'd survived to get here. No idea what she was capable of. Her phone buzzed again. Ella, sending her more names from that worn notebook. More patients denied care. More families destroyed. More evidence for the war ahead. The afternoon sun struggled to break through the clouds as Ella hurried into Amani's office, clutching a weathered cardboard box. She locked the door behind her, drawing the blinds before setting it on the desk. "Been keeping these at my sister's house?" Ella said, opening the box to reveal dozens of flash drives, each labeled with dates spanning back 15 years. "Didn't trust leaving them at home after the break-in." Amani picked up one of the drives, examining the faded label. "What exactly are we looking at?" "Evidence." Ella's voice was tight. "Every time they deleted patient files, I made copies. Started after they lost records of Mrs. Johnson's death in 2008. Sweet lady. Came in with chest pains. They sent her home saying it was anxiety. She died that night." Julianne plugged the first drive into her laptop. "How did you get access to these files?" "Night shift supervisor privileges." Ella's smile was grim. "Amazing what people don't notice when they think you're just another tired old nurse doing paperwork." They spent hours going through the files. Each drive revealed more patients marked as voluntary walkouts, people who supposedly left without treatment. But Ella had been thorough, matching these records with security camera footage, showing something very different. "Look at this one," Amani said, turning her screen. The grainy video showed a young Latino man being escorted out by security while clutching his side. File says he left voluntarily at 10:42 p.m. Video shows him being forced out at 10:39 p.m. "Miguel Ramirez," Ella said quietly, 23 years old, ruptured appendix. By the time his family got him to County General, it was too late. Julianne had been keeping count. That's 47 cases so far, predominantly Black and Latino patients, all marked as walkouts, all actually turned away. "And those are just the ones I could document," Ella added. "There were so many others." Amani stood, pacing the office. "This isn't just a few racist doctors. The records were altered, security footage archived instead of deleted. Billing codes changed. She stopped at the window. This runs through multiple departments: administration, records, security, billing. All reporting to Grayson. Julianne finished. I need to talk to him. Amani checked her watch. He should still be in his office. Amani? Wait, Julianne protested. We need to document everything first, get our legal team. But Amani was already heading for the door. Keep going through those drives. I want to see his face when he realizes what we have. She found Grayson in his office, perfectly pressed suit, still immaculate despite the late hour. He looked up with that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Ms. Rivers, to what do I owe the pleasure? 47 patients, Thomas. Amani sat across from him, uninvited. That's how many we've confirmed were marked as walkouts after being forcibly removed. How many more are there? His smile didn't waver. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Really? Miguel Ramirez doesn't ring a bell? Or Maria Santos? James Wilson? All dead because this hospital turned them away, then covered it up. Those patients chose to leave. We have the security footage. Amani leaned forward. All of it. 15 years' worth. Along with the altered records, deleted files, and changed billing codes. Want to try again? Something flickered in Grayson's eyes. A brief flash of uncertainty before his mask of confidence returned. He leaned back, straightening his tie. You have no idea what you're stepping into, he said softly. This hospital serves a vital role in the community. Change is disruptive, dangerous even, for everyone involved. Is that a threat? Simply an observation. He stood smoothly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner engagement. Amani watched him leave, his expensive shoes clicking down the hallway. She waited until his footsteps faded before pulling out her phone to text Julianne. Back in her office, they were still going through files when Amani's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She put it on speaker. You're playing with people who can make you disappear. The voice was digitally altered, inhuman. The call ended. That's it, Julianne said, grabbing her coat. We're calling the police. Not yet. Amani replayed the message, studying it. They just threatened to kill you. They threatened to make me disappear. Different thing. Amani's voice was calm. And they're scared enough to make threats, which means we're close to something big. Ella closed the box of drives carefully. I've seen what these people can do, Amani. They have connections in the police department, the medical board, City Hall. Then we'll need to be smarter than them. Amani's fingers traced the edge of her desk. Keep going through the files. I want every patient name, every altered record, every deleted video. Build the case so tight they can't wiggle out. And then, Julianne asked, then we make sure the truth doesn't disappear. She looked at the box of drives. Ella, how many copies of these files do you have? 3 sets, one at my sister's, one in a safety deposit box, one here. Make it 5. Different locations, different cities. I want backup plans for our backup plans. The office fell quiet, except for the soft whir of Julianne's laptop and the distant sounds of the hospital. Somewhere above them, the ER continued its endless cycle of life and death, pain and healing. But down here, in this room, 3 women began laying the groundwork for a revolution, one flash drive at a time. Morning light filtered through Amani's office window as she watched the news report, her jaw tightening with each word. Sources claim that Metasphere CEO Amani Rivers may have fabricated evidence of racial discrimination at Ridgeview Medical Center, the anchor said. Internal documents obtained by Channel 7 suggest patient records were altered to support these allegations. The screen cut to Dr. Reed, sitting in a leather armchair, his face a mask of practiced grief. Tears glistened in his eyes. "I was only following hospital policy," he said, voice breaking. "Every patient who left without treatment signed voluntary discharge forms. Ms. Rivers is destroying my reputation to push her political agenda." Julianne burst into the office, tablet in hand. "Metasphere stock is down 12%. The board's calling an emergency meeting." "Of course they are." Amani muted the TV. "How did Reed get his hands on those documents?" "Someone leaked them." Julianne pulled up her emails. "But they're cherry-picked. They only show the altered records, not Ella's originals." Amani's phone buzzed. Another board member demanding answers. She'd been dodging calls all morning. "They want me to make a statement," she said. "Deny the investigation, say it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe we should—" A knock interrupted them. Ella stood in the doorway, her usual composed demeanor cracking slightly. "You need to see this." She held up her phone. The screen showed her small brick house, covered in spray-painted slurs. The words "race traitor" stretched across her front door in dripping red paint. "They did this last night," Ella said quietly. "My granddaughter saw it first. She's 8. Amani's hands clenched into fists. "I'll have security at your house within the hour. We'll get cameras installed, change the locks." "That's not all." Ella handed her an envelope. "This came certified mail this morning." Inside was a letter from Reed's lawyer threatening a defamation lawsuit unless Amani publicly retracted her slanderous accusations within 48 hours. "They're trying to bury us," Julianne said. "The stock drop, the media spin, the lawsuit threat. It's coordinated. And effective." Amani watched another email pop up from the board. "They're attacking our credibility because they know it's our word against theirs. The files could be disputed. Records can be questioned." She stood suddenly, pacing the office. "We need something they can't deny. Something visual." "The security footage?" Julianne asked. "Most of it's corrupted or deleted," Ella said. "They're thorough about covering their tracks. But not perfect." Amani stopped pacing. "The night they threw me out, that footage has to exist somewhere. A CEO being dragged out by security? That's too juicy not to save." "The digital copies are gone," Julianne reminded her. "I checked every server." "What about physical backups?" Amani turned to Ella. "Where does Ridgeview store their old security tapes?" "Basement archives." Ella's eyes widened. "They keep everything from the last 5 years in cold storage. But it's restricted access, keycard only." "I'm the owner of this hospital," Amani said. "I have access everywhere." She checked her watch. "It's almost midnight. Night shift will be focused on the ER. Perfect time for some late-night filing." "I'm coming with you," Julianne insisted. "No." Amani grabbed her coat. "Stay here with Ella. Keep going through those drives. If anyone asks, I'm homesick, stressed about the media coverage." She pulled a small flashlight from her desk drawer. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, call our lawyers." "This is crazy," Julianne protested. "At least let security." "Security reports to Grayson," Ella cut in. "The fewer people who know, the better." The hospital corridors were dim and quiet as Amani made her way to the basement stairs. Her heels clicked softly on the tile, each sound making her wince. She should have worn sneakers. The basement level was even darker, lit only by emergency exit signs that cast everything in a dull red glow. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and dust. Her flashlight beam caught rows of metal shelving stretching into the shadows. Amani found the security archive section marked by faded labels. 5 years of surveillance footage, hundreds of labeled boxes. She started with the most recent year, working backward. The minutes ticked by as she searched. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julianne. "Board wants emergency meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. What should I tell them?" Amani ignored it, focusing on the dates. 3 months ago, 2 months, 1. There, the week of her ER visit. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled the box from the shelf. Inside were dozens of backup drives, each labeled with dates and camera locations. She found the ER footage quickly. Someone had tagged it with a red dot. Special interest, clearly. But why keep it if they were trying to hide evidence? Unless... The sound of a door creaking open echoed through the basement. Footsteps. Someone else was down here. Amani quickly pocketed the drive and slid the box back in place. The footsteps were getting closer. She clicked off her flashlight, pressing herself against the shelves as a beam of light swept past the end of the row. Her heart pounded. The security patrol wasn't due for another hour, which meant whoever was down here had the same idea she did. Find the evidence before someone else could. The footsteps stopped. Another light beam cut through the darkness. They were searching the shelves systematically. It was only a matter of time before they reached her row. The drive felt heavy in her pocket as she weighed her options. Run for the stairs? Try to sneak past them? Stay hidden and hope they gave up? The light grew brighter. Closer. She could hear breathing now. More than one person. The beam of light swung closer. Amani held her breath, pressing deeper into the shadows between the metal shelves. Just as the footsteps reached her row, a familiar whisper cut through the darkness. "Amani? Where are you?" Relief flooded through her. "Ella?" The veteran nurse appeared at the end of the row. Flashlight beam pointed down. "Sorry to scare you. I couldn't let you do this alone." "I told you to stay upstairs," Amani whispered, though she was grateful for the company. 35 years at this hospital," Ella said quietly. "I know every corner of these archives, and I know which boxes they don't want us to find." She moved purposefully down the row, running her fingers along the shelf labels. "Here." She pulled down a heavy box marked Administrative Records 2023. Inside, beneath a layer of paper files, was a hard drive with a simple label. Incident 1342. "What is it?" Amani asked. "Everything they tried to bury." Ella's voice was grim. "I've seen them add to this box for years. Never knew exactly what was on it. But I knew it was important by how careful they were with it." Amani pulled out her laptop, hands trembling slightly as she connected the drive. A password prompt appeared. "It's encrypted," she muttered. "Try Grayson 1942, Ella suggested. "It's his father's birth year. He uses it for everything." The screen unlocked, revealing dozens of video files. Amani clicked the first one, footage from the ER waiting room, dated 3 months ago. A young black woman clutching a crying baby, pleading with the desk nurse. Dr. Reed appearing, speaking sharply, pointing to the door. Security escorting them out. "I remember her," Ella whispered. "That baby had a fever of 104. They said it wasn't urgent enough." They watched file after file. An elderly Latino man experiencing chest pains, dismissed as probably indigestion. A black teenager with a broken arm, told to stop being dramatic. In one particularly cruel video, Dr. Reed and 2 other doctors were laughing as a woman collapsed in the lobby, one of them mimicking her fall. "How many?" Amani's voice shook with rage. "Hundreds over the years." Ella's face was hard in the dim light. Some died after being turned away. Heart attacks, strokes, infections that could have been treated. They coded them all as voluntary discharge or left against medical advice. Amani found her own incident file, labeled simply Rivers Security Removal. The footage was crystal clear. Her desperate pleas, Reed's smugness, the rough hands of security dragging her out. She watched herself fall, saw her phone skid across the floor. "Copy everything," she ordered, pulling out a portable drive. "Every file, every date, every—" A distant door creaked. Real footsteps this time, heavy and purposeful. They worked quickly, transferring files as the steps grew closer. Ella kept watch while Amani's fingers flew over the keyboard. 89%, 93%, 97%. The footsteps reached the archive's floor. A beam of light swept under the door. "Come on, come on," Amani whispered. Finally, 100%. She yanked out both drives, stuffing them into her briefcase as Ella guided her to a back exit. They emerged into a service corridor, hearts pounding. "This way," Ella mouthed, leading them through a maze of maintenance halls until they reached a staff elevator. Only when they were inside Amani's office did they dare to breathe normally. "We need to get these somewhere safe," Amani said, patting her briefcase. "Multiple copies, different locations." "Wait." Ella was examining the archive's door lock. "Look at this." Fresh scratches marked the keyhole. Someone else had picked their way in recently. "We weren't the first ones down there tonight," Ella said quietly. "But why didn't they take the drive?" Amani wondered. "Maybe they couldn't crack the encryption. Or maybe—" Ella's eyes narrowed. "Maybe they wanted us to find it." They took the staff exit, not trusting the main doors. The night air was cool on their faces as they hurried across the parking lot. Amani's car was just ahead. Ella's grip suddenly tightened on her arm. Across the street, a black SUV sat idling, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights. "They're watching us," Ella whispered. Amani forced herself to keep walking normally, though her pulse raced. The briefcase felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside were hundreds of lives reduced to cold statistics. Years of cruelty captured in digital frames. She thought of the woman with the feverish baby, the old man clutching his chest, her own humiliation preserved in high definition. Each file was a weapon now, aimed straight at the heart of Ridgeview's corruption. The SUV's engine rumbled. Its headlights remained dark, but Amani could feel eyes following their every move. She unlocked her car with steady hands, refusing to show fear. "They're not going to stop us," she said quietly as they got in. "Not anymore." The evidence was secure in her briefcase, multiple lives' worth of injustice waiting to be exposed. But as she started the engine, Amani knew the real battle was just beginning. The watching SUV was just the first sign. There would be more threats, more pressure, more attempts to bury the truth. She glanced at Ella, saw the same determination in the older woman's eyes. They had the proof now. All they needed was the courage to use it. The morning after their archive discovery, Amani sat in her office reviewing the video files when her assistant buzzed the intercom. "Ms. Rivers, there's a Marcus Reed here to see you. Says it's urgent." Amani's finger hovered over the intercom button. "Reed, as in—" "Dr. Reed's son. He's a medical student here." She considered turning him away, but something in her gut told her to listen. "Send him in." The young man who entered looked nothing like his father. Where Dr. Reed had been all polished arrogance, Marcus was nervous energy and earnest eyes. He twisted the strap of his messenger bag as he approached her desk. "Ms. Rivers, He swallowed hard. "I needed to apologize for what my father did to you." Amani studied him carefully. "You weren't there that night." "No, but I've seen him do it before." Marcus's voice was quiet but steady. "To other patients. Too many times." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. He sat, still fidgeting with his bag. "I've been collecting things," he continued. "Documents, emails, things I wasn't supposed to see. I thought maybe someday I'd have the courage to do something about it. And now? Now I've seen what you're trying to do here." He finally met her eyes. "You're the first person who's actually stood up to them. Who might be able to make real change?" Amani leaned forward. "Them?" Marcus glanced at the door before pulling a thick manila envelope from his bag. "Mr. Grayson and his whole network. They've been running this system for years. My father was just following orders. He spread the contents across her desk. Internal memos, spreadsheets, handwritten notes. See these codes? They mark certain patients as high-cost risks. It's basically a profile. Race, income level, insurance status. If they match enough markers, doctors are pressured to find reasons to deny treatment. Amani picked up one memo, dated 3 years back. The language was carefully crafted to avoid direct discrimination, but the meaning was clear. Cost ratio optimization through selective patient redirection. They track it all, Marcus continued. How many redirects each doctor manages, the money saved. There are even bonuses for keeping certain numbers down. And your father? Marcus's shoulders slumped. He was their star performer. Always found a reason why someone wasn't really an emergency. I tried talking to him about it once. He said I was too young to understand business realities. The door opened, and Julianne stepped in, freezing when she saw Marcus. "Everything okay here?" "More than okay," Amani said. "Mr. Reed was just providing us with some very interesting documentation." Julianne moved to examine the papers, her investigative journalist instincts kicking in. "This is extensive. Names, dates, direct orders from administration." She looked at Marcus. "You know how dangerous this is?" He nodded. "I've seen what they do to people who speak up, but I can't stay silent anymore. Not after what happened to you, Ms. Rivers. Not after everything I've witnessed." Julianne pulled Amani aside while Marcus organized the documents. "We need to protect him," she whispered. "If Grayson finds out he's helping us—" "Agreed." Amani turned back to Marcus. "Would you be willing to testify? Make a formal statement?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "But they'll try to discredit me. Say I'm just angry at my father. Making things up. That's why we need to move fast." Amani checked her calendar. "I'm calling a press conference in 48 hours. Full disclosure. Everything we've found. The videos, your documents, all of it. We should keep Marcus's involvement quiet until then," Julianne advised. "Once it's public, they can't touch him without looking guilty. But these next 2 days..." Marcus gathered his things. "I should get back before someone notices I'm gone. I have copies of everything at home if you need them." "Be careful," Amani said. "Don't tell anyone you were here. Not even people you trust." He managed a small smile. "I've gotten good at keeping secrets." They watched through the window as he walked to his car in the staff parking lot. The afternoon sun caught his white coat, so similar to his father's, but worn with such different purpose. "He's brave," Julianne said quietly. "He's young," Amani replied. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Marcus's car pulled out onto the main road. Amani turned back to her desk, already planning the press conference, when Julianne gasped. "Oh my God!" Amani spun around just in time to see a black SUV ram into Marcus's smaller car. The impact sent his vehicle spinning across lanes, metal screaming against metal. The SUV backed up and struck again, driving Marcus's car through the guardrail. "Call 911!" Amani was already running, Julianne right behind her. They sprinted across the parking lot as the SUV peeled away. No plates visible. Marcus's car had rolled down the embankment, coming to rest on its side. Smoke rose from the crumpled hood. The driver's side was crushed inward, the windshield a spiderweb of cracks. "Marcus!" Amani climbed down the slope, hearing sirens in the distance. "Can you hear me?" A weak groan came from inside. Blood trickled down the shattered window. "Stay still," she called. "Help is coming. Just stay with us." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "They knew. Don't try to talk." She reached through the window, careful of the glass, and found his hand. "You're going to be okay." Emergency vehicles screamed into the parking lot. Paramedics scrambled down with equipment, gently pushing Amani back. She watched them work, her hand sticky with Marcus's blood. "This isn't corporate politics anymore," she said to Julianne, who stood pale-faced beside her. "This is criminal." The ambulance doors slammed shut around Marcus's broken body. The siren wailed to life, carrying away the brave young man who had dared to tell the truth. Behind her, the hospital rose like a fortress, its windows reflecting the red emergency lights like eyes in the growing dusk. Amani's phone buzzed at 5 a.m., jolting her awake. 27 missed calls. Hundreds of notifications. Her heart pounding, she opened the first message, a video link from a local news station. The footage showed her in the hospital hallway, but something was wrong. The images were choppy, spliced together. In this version, she appeared to be screaming at nurses, shoving past them, her face contorted with rage. Nothing like the calm conversations she remembered. "They edited it," she whispered, watching herself become a monster on screen. Her phone rang. Julianne. "Turn on Channel 4, now." The morning news anchor's face filled her bedroom TV screen. Shocking footage emerged overnight of Metasphere CEO Amani Rivers allegedly assaulting hospital staff. Sources claim Rivers fabricated discrimination charges after being denied preferential treatment. Another clip played. Security footage of her first night in the ER, but carefully cut. Gone was Dr. Reed's sneering dismissal. Instead, it showed only her growing frustration, ending with her appearing to lunge at security guards. "They're rewriting history," she said to Julianne, "making me look unstable. It gets worse." The board called an emergency meeting. 8 a.m. When Amani arrived at Ridgeview, reporters swarmed her car. Camera flashes burst like lightning as she pushed through them, ignoring their shouted questions. The boardroom was packed. Thomas Grayson sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of concern. "Ms. Rivers, please sit." She remained standing. "This is a setup. We've received multiple complaints about your behavior," Grayson said smoothly. "Staff feel threatened. Patients are uncomfortable. The board has no choice but to suspend you pending investigation. You doctored that footage. We have sworn statements from witnesses." He slid a folder across the table. "Including several nurses who say you've been pressuring them to falsify records of racial bias." Security guards appeared at her elbows. "Please surrender your access badges and clear your office by noon." In the hallway, whispers followed her like shadows. Staff who'd smiled yesterday now turned away. Near the nurses' station, she spotted Ella being confronted by hospital administrators. "Your nursing license has been temporarily suspended," one was saying, "pending review of your involvement in falsifying patient records." Ella's face was stone. 35 years. Never a single complaint. And now, suddenly, I'm incompetent? "We have evidence." "You have lies," Ella snapped. "And I know exactly where they came from." Amani started toward her, but Julianne caught her arm. "Your office. Now." They found the door already open. The safe behind her desk gaped empty. The evidence drive with surveillance footage gone. Even her personal laptop was missing. "They're erasing everything," Amani said numbly. Julianne's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She put it on speaker. "Ms. Cole," a digitally altered voice said, "we can make this all go away. Ms. Rivers keeps her job. Nurse Davenport keeps her license. All you have to do is withdraw the discrimination claims. Simple. And if we refuse? Then careers end. Reputations die. People get hurt, like young Mr. Reed." The line went dead. By evening, every major network was running the story. Social media exploded with edited clips and out-of-context quotes. Comment sections filled with racist attacks, barely disguised as concerns about hospital management. Amani sat in her car in the empty parking lot, listening to the same anchor who'd interviewed Dr. Reed now gleefully report her downfall. Sources say Rivers' takeover of Ridgeview was was part of a calculated plan to manufacture racial controversy. Staff describe her as hostile and aggressive. A tear slid down her cheek. Then another. All her work, her reputation, her fight for justice, being twisted into exactly the angry black woman stereotype she'd spent her life disproving. The tears turned hot. Her hands clenched the steering wheel until her knuckles ached. They thought they could break her with the same old tactics, the same racist tropes, the same assumption that she'd back down when threatened. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Her phone lit up. Julianne. Amani wiped her eyes and answered. "They think I'm done," she said, before Julianne could speak. "They think this is my limit. What do you want to do? They're using the media against us? Fine. We take it to the public. The real public." Her voice hardened. Not their filtered channels, not their edited narratives. Raw truth. Every bit of evidence we still have. Every witness willing to speak. Live-streamed where they can't control it. They'll come after us hard. Let them try. I'm done playing by their rules. She started her car, the engine's growl matching her rising determination. If they think this is me defeated, they've never seen me at full strength. "I'm with you," Julianne said. "All the way." The parking lot cameras watched her drive away, their red lights blinking like warning signals in the gathering dark. But Amani wasn't running. She was regrouping. And when she came back, they'd learn what real power looked like. Not their kind, built on corruption and fear, but the power of truth, of justice, delayed but not denied. The power of a woman who'd faced their worst and found herself unbreakable. They wanted a war? She'd give them one they'd never forget. Julianne's apartment became their war room at midnight. Laptops glowed in the darkness as Amani, Ella, and Julianne huddled around the dining table, surrounded by takeout containers and empty coffee cups. "We still have the backup files I kept at home," Ella said, plugging in a worn flash drive. "They didn't know about these." Julianne's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I've got contacts at 3 independent news sites ready to publish. They're small, but their stories trend when they hit corruption hard enough." Amani studied a list of hospital staff on her screen. "We need inside witnesses, people who'll speak up despite the threats." "I might have someone," Ella said, pulling out her phone. She dialed, waited. "Sarah? It's Ella. Remember what we talked about? It's time." Sarah Chen was a night shift ER nurse who'd been recording patient stories on her phone for months. An hour later, she was sitting in Julianne's living room, hands shaking as she uploaded dozens of videos. "They'll fire me for this," she whispered. "We'll protect you," Amani promised. "You're not alone anymore." Throughout the night, more hospital staff arrived secretly. A lab tech with copies of altered test results, a billing clerk who'd tracked suspicious payment patterns, an orderly who'd witnessed Dr. Reed turning away critical patients. Julianne coordinated with journalists while Amani and Ella organized the evidence. By dawn, Sarah Chen was doing something unprecedented. Live streaming from inside Ridgeview's ER. "I'm showing you what really happens here." Her voice trembled through the phone video. "Watch how they treat this elderly black woman with chest pain. They're marking her as non-urgent without even checking her vitals." The stream went viral within hours. Other staff members began sharing their own stories anonymously online. Ridgeview Truth started trending. "They're trying to block the feeds," Julianne reported, monitoring social media. "But people are mirrors hosting faster than they can take them down." Around noon, the first protesters appeared outside Ridgeview. By evening, hundreds gathered, carrying signs, "Patience over profit," and "End medical racism." Inside her command center, Amani watched the crowd grow on local news feeds. Thomas Grayson appeared on screen, dismissing the protests as manufactured outrage and defending the hospital's exemplary record. But this time, The anchors weren't buying it. They played clips from Sarah's live stream, showing clear discrimination in real time. "My phone's blowing up," Ella said. "Nurses from other hospitals are coming forward with similar stories. This is bigger than Ridgeview." Julianne's laptop pinged with a news alert. The governor's office just released a statement. They're launching a preliminary investigation into discriminatory practices at Ridgeview. "It's working," Amani said softly. "They can't bury the truth anymore." More protesters arrived as night fell. They set up floodlights and brought megaphones. Their chants echoed through the streets. "Equal care! Equal rights!" "I need to see this," Amani said suddenly. "In person." "Too dangerous," Julianne warned. "They're still watching for you." But Amani was already pulling on a gray hoodie, similar to the one she'd worn that first night in the ER. She tucked her hair under a baseball cap. Sometimes you have to witness your own revolution. The protest crowd had swelled to fill the entire block. Amani slipped between bodies, anonymous in her disguise. The energy was electric. People of all races stood together, sharing stories of medical discrimination, demanding change. A young black woman was speaking through a megaphone. "My grandmother died in Ridgeview's waiting room while they ignored her. But Amani Rivers showed us we don't have to accept this treatment anymore." Amani moved closer, drawn by the raw pain and power in the woman's voice. "They tried to silence her like they silence all of us. But she fought back. She exposed their lies." The hood slipped slightly, revealing Amani's face in the floodlights. A teenager standing nearby did a double-take. "Oh my God," she whispered. Then louder, "It's her! Amani Rivers is here." The crowd turned. Voices rose in recognition. Someone started chanting, "Amani! Amani!" Others joined in. The sound built like a wave, hundreds of voices calling her name. Not in mockery or accusation, but in solidarity and support. "Justice for Amani!" The chant transformed. "Justice for Amani!" She stood rooted, overwhelmed by the energy flowing through the crowd. These weren't just protesters. They were witnesses, survivors, people who'd faced the same discrimination she had, people who refused to be silenced anymore. Sarah Chen's latest live stream captured the moment. Watching from their command center, Ella and Julianne saw their friend surrounded by supporters, her face illuminated by phone lights and camera flashes. "Look at that," Ella said, tears in her eyes. "They tried to make her invisible. Instead, they made her a symbol." The crowd pressed closer, not threatening but protective. Hands reached out to touch her shoulders, her arms, not to hurt, but to thank her, to share their stories, to show her she wasn't fighting alone. The protest chants echoed off Ridgeview's cold walls, carrying up to the executive offices where Thomas Grayson and his allies were surely watching. The message was clear. Their time of unchecked power was ending. The people had found their voice, and they weren't going to stop using it until justice was served. The grand marble halls of the state capitol building buzzed with tension. News cameras lined the walls of the packed hearing room. Thomas Grayson sat at the front table in an expensive suit, flanked by lawyers. Dr. Reed slouched beside him, his usual smirk replaced by a nervous twitch. "The allegations against Ridgeview Medical Center are completely unfounded," Grayson testified, his voice smooth as oil. "Ms. Rivers fabricated data to justify a hostile takeover. We have independently verified that our patient care meets all regulatory standards." Camera shutters clicked as Dr. Reed nodded along. The hospital board members, seated in a solemn row behind them, murmured in agreement. "Furthermore," Reed added, leaning into the microphone, "I was wrongfully terminated for following established protocols. Ms. Rivers has damaged my reputation with false claims of racism." The heavy wooden doors at the back of the chamber swung open. Heads turned as Amani Rivers entered, Ella and Julianne beside her. They moved with quiet purpose down the center aisle, Amani wore a crisp white suit that seemed to glow under the harsh lights. "Madam Chairwoman," Amani addressed the lead investigator, "I request permission to present new evidence." Grayson's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! Any new evidence should have been submitted through proper channels." "I'll allow it," the chairwoman said, adjusting her glasses. Given the serious nature of these allegations, Julianne placed a sleek external hard drive on the evidence table. This was recovered from Marcus Reed's hospital room after his accident. Her emphasis on the last word made Dr. Reed flinch. "Marcus," he whispered, color draining from his face. Amani's voice filled the chamber. Before someone tried to silence him, Marcus Reed copied years of surveillance footage, internal memos, and patient records. As Dr. Reed's son and a medical student at Ridgeview, he had unique access. The tech team connected the drive to the room's display screens. The first video began to play. Crystal-clear security footage from the ER waiting room. The date stamp showed 3 years ago. An elderly black woman clutched her chest, clearly struggling to breathe. Dr. Reed appeared, barely glancing at her before marking something on his clipboard. Security escorted her out. The timestamp showed she died in the parking lot 20 minutes later. Gasps rippled through the audience. More videos played. More patients turned away. More redirections that ended in tragedy. Over 200 documented cases, Amani stated, disproportionately affecting minority patients. Grayson shifted in his seat, dabbing sweat from his forehead with a monogrammed handkerchief. "These could be edited." "The metadata is intact," Julianne interrupted. "Every file has been authenticated by 3 independent forensic experts." Then came the internal emails, memos about cost control and demographic management, instructions to mark certain zip codes as non-priority. "Doctor?" Reed's facade cracked. "We were just following orders," he blurted out, pointing at Grayson. "He said the investors demanded better margins." "Charles, shut up," Grayson hissed. But it was too late. The final video began. The night Amani came to the ER. The footage showed her clear distress, Reed's dismissal, the brutal escort out. But this version had audio. "We're not a charity case," Reed's voice rang through the speakers. "Go somewhere else if you want handouts." The current Reed slumped in his chair as his recorded self continued spewing racist assumptions. Ella stepped forward next, her voice steady. "I've worked at Ridgeview for 35 years. I documented every incident, every cover-up, but I was afraid to come forward alone. They made sure we were all afraid." She pulled out a thick binder. These are signed statements from 47 current and former staff members. Details of threats, retaliation, forced silence. The chairwoman's face hardened as she flipped through the pages. Grayson stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted. "These proceedings are illegal. I demand we adjourn immediately." Amani stepped closer to his table, her voice cutting through his panic like a blade. "No, Mr. Grayson. What you did was illegal." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. In the chaos, Dr. Reed crumpled forward, head in his hands. His lawyer frantically whispered in his ear. Grayson's face twisted with rage as he realized his carefully constructed world was collapsing. He jabbed a finger at Amani. "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in order." The chairwoman's gavel cracked like a gunshot. "Mr. Grayson, I suggest you exercise your right to remain silent, because based on this evidence, you'll be exercising that right quite often in the near future." State police officers appeared at the doors. The chairwoman nodded to them, then turned to address the packed chamber. "This hearing will recess while the Oversight Committee reviews this new evidence. Mr. Grayson and Dr. Reed will remain in the building for questioning. As the officers approached, Grayson's lawyers huddled around him. Reed sat motionless, destroyed by his own son's testimony. The board members whispered urgently among themselves, already trying to distance themselves from the scandal. As the hearing room descended into chaos, Grayson grabbed Reed's arm and pulled him into a side hallway, away from the cameras and microphones. His polished facade had cracked, revealing raw desperation beneath. "Listen carefully," Grayson hissed, pinning Reed against the wall. "Get to Ridgeview. Now. Wipe the servers clean before the feds show up. Everything in the basement archives? Gone." Reed's eyes darted nervously. "But that's destruction of evidence." "You're already finished," Grayson sneered. "Unless you want federal prison, do what I say. I'll make sure you have enough money to disappear." Before Reed could respond, a commotion erupted in the main chamber. Through the doorway, they saw Marcus Reed being helped to the witness table. He wore a thick neck brace, his face still bruised from the accident. The sight of his injured son made Reed freeze. "I need to testify," Marcus announced, his voice carrying across the now silent room, "about what I witnessed at Ridgeview Medical Center." Grayson cursed under his breath and slipped away, leaving Reed paralyzed in the doorway as his son began to speak. "I saw my father turn away patients based on their race and economic status," Marcus testified. "Not just once, hundreds of times. Mr. Grayson gave the orders through coded memos about cost management and demographic optimization, but we all knew what it meant." Marcus's hands trembled as he continued. "When I gathered evidence to expose this, someone tried to kill me, ran my car off the road. I can't prove who ordered it, but I know why it happened." Reed stumbled forward into the chamber, drawn by his son's words. The cameras swiveled to capture his stricken expression. "Marcus," he croaked. "Son, please." "No, Dad." Marcus met his father's gaze steadily. "I won't be silent anymore. Not after what I've seen. Not after what you did to Ms. Rivers and countless others." Something broke inside Reed. He lurched to the witness table, shouldering past his alarmed lawyer. "It's true," he blurted into the microphone. "All of it. Grayson told us which patients to turn away. Said it was about profit margins. But we knew. We all knew. I told myself I was just following orders." His composure crumbled completely. "I became exactly what I swore I'd never be. A coward. A bigot. My own son had to nearly die to make me see it." The hearing room erupted again. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed frantically. Through it all, Amani sat perfectly still, watching justice unfold. Suddenly, an FBI agent burst through the doors. "Federal agents are at Ridgeview Medical Center. Someone's trying to access the server room." The chairwoman's gavel cracked. "Dr. Reed, Mr. Grayson, you are not to leave this building." But Grayson had vanished. Reed slumped in his chair as state police moved to flank him. At Ridgeview, FBI teams swept through the corridors, securing evidence. They found Grayson's assistant frantically feeding documents into a shredder. In the basement, IT staff were caught midway through a server wipe. "Step away from the computers," an agent ordered, weapon drawn. "Hands where we can see them." Hours later, Amani stood in the ER hallway, the same spot where she'd been humiliated months ago. The floor gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights as federal agents led a handcuffed Dr. Reed past in slow procession. He looked smaller now, diminished. His white coat was gone, replaced by the shame of his exposed prejudice. Their eyes met briefly as she stood tall in her crisp suit, a living reminder of his fatal underestimation. Reed opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Amani didn't break her silence as he shuffled past. She didn't need to. The click of her heels on the tile as she walked away said everything necessary. Marcus watched from a nearby chair, still wearing his neck brace. His father's handcuffed form disappeared around the corner, the same corner where he'd turned away so many desperate patients. "Ms. Rivers," Marcus called softly. "What happens now?" Amani paused, looking back at the young man who'd risked everything for truth. The ER waiting room behind him was filled with patients of all backgrounds, being treated with equal urgency and care by Ella's newly trained staff. "Now," she said, "we rebuild. The right way." Through the windows, news vans still crowded the parking lot. Reporters would want statements about Grayson's escape, about the federal investigation, about the sweeping changes coming to Ridgeview. But for this moment, in this hallway, where injustice had once reigned, justice itself walked quietly past in handcuffs. The symbolism wasn't lost on the hospital staff who paused to watch. This was the same corridor where Reed had wielded his prejudice like a weapon. Now he shuffled through in chains, stripped of his power to harm. Ella appeared beside Amani, touching her arm gently. "The FBI wants to interview more staff members about the evidence destruction attempt." Amani nodded. "Make sure they have everything they need." She looked around at the bustling ER, now operating as it always should have, treating every patient with dignity and care. This is just the beginning. Federal agents continued to move through the building, boxes of evidence in their arms. The computers that had once hidden deadly secrets would now help bring their conspirators to justice. In the waiting room, new signs hung prominently. All patients welcome, no exceptions. 3 weeks after Reed's dramatic confession, Amani sat in her office reviewing the morning headlines splashed across multiple newspapers. "Hospital execs indicted. Federal grand jury charges 12 in systemic discrimination case. Ridgeview scandal rocks medical community. Former admin Thomas Grayson arrested in Mexico after 2-week manhunt." She traced her finger across the words, remembering the long path that led here. Julianne burst in, waving her tablet excitedly. "They're calling it the biggest healthcare discrimination case in decades," Julianne said. "Your congressional testimony is trending nationwide." The previous day's hearing played on Julianne's screen. Amani saw herself at the witness table, addressing the House Committee on Healthcare Reform with quiet authority. "What happened to me was not an isolated incident," her recorded voice declared. "This was systematic denial of care based on race and class, hidden behind corporate policies and profit margins. People died because of these practices. Children lost parents. Families were destroyed." The camera had panned across the solemn faces of committee members as she continued. "But this isn't just about Ridgeview. This pattern exists in hospitals across America. We have the data. We have the testimony. The question is, what will you do about it?" Now, watching the playback, Amani noticed details she'd missed in the moment. The way several representatives wiped away tears, how others scribbled urgent notes. Her words had landed exactly as intended. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Ella entered, holding a thick manila envelope. "It's official," Ella said, her voice thick with emotion. "The medical board just revoked Charles Reed's license permanently. He can never practice again." Amani nodded slowly. "And Grayson?" "Facing 20 years minimum. The prosecutor says he's willing to name names in exchange for leniency, but they're not offering deals." Ella's smile was grim. Too much public outrage. "Good." Amani stood and walked to the window. Construction crews were already replacing the old Ridgeview sign below. "What about your reinstatement?" Ella straightened proudly. "The board unanimously approved it this morning. But," she paused, "this director of patient advocacy position you're offering? Are you sure?" "There's no one better," Amani said firmly. "You protected patients in secret for decades. Now you can do it openly, with real authority. Tears welled in Ella's eyes. "Never thought I'd see this day." A gentle tap at the door revealed Marcus, looking stronger now without his neck brace. He carried a laptop displaying colorful charts. "The diversity initiative projections you asked for," he said. "We've already got 30 hospitals interested in implementing the new bias detection AI protocols." Amani gestured him in. "Show me." Marcus laid out his presentation with the careful precision of a young doctor-to-be. His father's downfall had only strengthened his determination to reform medicine from within. "The software flags potential discrimination in real time," he explained. "Wait times, treatment disparities, pain medication rates. Everything that was hidden before becomes visible." "Exactly what we needed when I first walked into that ER," Amani mused. "How soon can we launch?" "The pilot program's ready whenever you are." Marcus's eyes shone with purpose. "We can prevent what happened to you from happening to anyone else." Julianne poked her head in. "They're ready for the ceremony." Amani smoothed her jacket and took a deep breath. "Let's not keep them waiting." Outside, hundreds had gathered for the hospital's grand reopening. Community members, patients, staff, and media filled rows of chairs. Many held signs reading, "Thank you, Ms. Rivers," and "Healthcare is a human right." As Amani took the podium, she saw familiar faces. The nurses who'd witnessed her humiliation now stood tall in fresh uniforms. Former patients who'd been turned away sat with their families, finally seen and valued. "When I first came to this hospital," she began, "I was judged by the color of my skin and the clothes I wore. Today, we begin a new chapter." She gestured to the veiled sign above the entrance. "This institution will no longer be a place of discrimination and fear. Instead, it will lead the fight for equality in healthcare." At her nod, workers pulled the covering away, revealing gleaming letters. "The Rivers Institute for Equal Care." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Ella wiped tears from her eyes. Marcus beamed with vindication. Even some of the reporters looked moved. "But this is more than just a name change," Amani continued. "We're implementing new technology to prevent bias, new training to challenge prejudice, new policies to ensure every patient receives equal care." She paused, surveying the sea of faces. "Most importantly, we're creating a model that other hospitals can follow. Because what happened here wasn't unique to Ridgeview. The disease of discrimination infects our entire healthcare system. But today, we begin the cure." More applause thundered across the courtyard. As Amani stepped back, she caught sight of a familiar figure slipping through the crowd. The young mother she'd seen being turned away that first night. Now she carried a healthy baby, and both wore bright smiles. Ella squeezed her hand. "You did it. We did it," Amani corrected. "All of us." The autumn sun glinted off the new sign, its promise of equality shining over the transformed hospital. Where darkness and prejudice once ruled, light and justice would now prevail. Camera flashes sparkled as Amani cut the ceremonial ribbon. The doors swung wide, welcoming all who needed care. No exceptions, no discrimination, no turning back. Morning light streamed through the newly installed floor-to-ceiling windows of the ER lobby, casting warm rays across the polished floors. Amani Rivers stood in the exact spot where, months ago, security had dragged her across these same tiles. The memory felt distant now, like a fading bruise. The walls, once an institutional beige, now glowed with soothing blue tones. Living plants dotted corner spaces, bringing life to what had been sterile and cold. But the biggest change wasn't in the decor. It was in the energy of the place. At the front desk, Nurse Gina Parker looked up from her computer screen, offering a genuine smile to an elderly black woman who approached clutching her side. "Good morning, ma'am," Gina said warmly, standing to help the woman to a chair. Let's get you checked in right away. Are you experiencing any pain? Amani watched the interaction with quiet satisfaction. Gina had been one of the first to volunteer for the hospital's new sensitivity training program. The change in her demeanor wasn't just professional, it was personal. The casual indifference that had once characterized her work had been replaced by authentic compassion. "Ms. Rivers?" A young resident approached, tablet in hand. "The morning rounds data shows zero discrepancy in wait times across all demographic groups. Third week in a row." Amani nodded, studying the charts. The AI monitoring system tracked everything from pain medication administration to specialist referrals, ensuring no pattern of bias could take root. Numbers didn't lie, and these told a story of transformation. She began her daily walk through the halls, noting the changes large and small. The waiting room televisions now displayed health information in multiple languages. The artwork on the walls reflected the diverse community they served. Even the snack machines offered dietary options for different cultural preferences. In the pediatric wing, a black female doctor sat cross-legged on the floor, playing blocks with a nervous young patient while explaining an upcoming procedure to his parents. Down another corridor, a Hispanic nurse practitioner conducted a consultation in Spanish. No translator needed. "Remember when this place felt like a prison?" Ella's voice came from behind her. The veteran nurse, now director of patient advocacy, fell into step beside Amani. "Hard to forget," Amani replied, pausing to observe a team meeting where staff from all backgrounds contributed openly to a treatment discussion. "But look at it now." Julianne joined them, her heels clicking purposefully on the tile. "The press can't get enough of our turnaround story. 3 more hospital groups called this morning, wanting to implement our bias detection protocols." They stopped at a wall where a bronze plaque caught the sunlight. The words engraved there had become the hospital's new foundation. "Every life deserves care. No exceptions." Below it hung framed photographs, the faces of patients who had died after being turned away in previous years. Their stories were now required reading for every new hire, a permanent reminder of why the reforms mattered. "The morning report shows we've treated twice as many patients this month compared to last year," Julianne said, checking her tablet. "And patient satisfaction scores are at 98%. Numbers matter," Amani agreed. "But it's the individual stories that count." She gestured to where a Muslim family was being treated with respect, their religious dietary requirements noted without hesitation, prayer space readily offered. Through the entrance doors, they could see Marcus working with the new mobile care unit. The converted van, painted with the Rivers Institute logo, provided basic medical services to underserved neighborhoods. Today, he was helping an elderly man check his blood pressure, speaking gently as he recorded the results. "Your son would be proud," Ella said quietly to Amani. "And your mother, too." Amani touched the locket at her neck, containing a photo of her mother, the nurse whose death from medical neglect had first inspired her career path. She always said the system needed to change from the inside out. They watched as Gina efficiently processed new arrivals, treating each person with equal urgency and respect. The nurse caught Amani's eye and gave a small nod, acknowledgement of how far they'd both come from that first terrible night. "Dr. Reed's old office is finally being converted," Julianne mentioned. "The new Community Health Education Center opens next week." "Perfect timing," Amani replied. "The first class of medical students starts their bias awareness rotation on Monday." They passed the security desk, where 2 new officers, specially trained in de-escalation and cultural sensitivity, greeted visitors warmly. No more intimidation, no more assumptions. Everyone who walked through these doors was treated first and foremost as a human being deserving of care. Through the windows, morning sun illuminated the hospital's new sign. The letters caught the light. Rivers Institute for Equal Care. A beacon of hope where there had once been only fear and prejudice. Amani stepped outside into the warm air, tilting her face up to study those letters. Behind her, the hospital hummed with purpose. Every patient valued, every life honored, every wound tended with equal care. "Justice doesn't heal every wound," she said softly, thinking of all those who had suffered before change came. But watching Marcus help another patient into the van, seeing Ella guide a family through the doors, observing Gina's gentle attention to each person who approached her desk, she knew it was a good start. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.